In 19,000 to 2000, example video created by Bruno Lake. In 19,000, Queen Victoria has proclaimed the Commonwealth for Australia. In 1901, Australia is titled and is a part of the Commonwealth. This is including WA and is open for New Zealand to be joining the Federation later. In 1915, Australia joins World War I in ally of Britain. During this time, soldiers fought in Gallipoli, and in this warfare attempted to capture the Ottoman in the capital of Constantinople in Istanbul to help secure the sea route against Russia. During this war, this cost Australia 17,594 lives and 20,000 soldiers were wounded. In 1918, World War I ended in November 11, which is known as Remembrance Day, to remember the 61,200 soldiers who have passed from that war, and the more than 153,509 who were wounded during this war. In 1920, Edith Cowan was the first woman elected in the Australian Parliament. Her image is commonly seen now in the $50 note, and as well as the Aboriginal population of Australia has been recorded at an extreme low of 60,000 people out of the recorded at the time 5.5 million of Australia's population. In 1929, the Labor has returned to office under James Scullin. After 2 days of being Prime Minister, the Wall Street crash triggers the Great Depression in Australia. In 1932, as an attempt to stop the overpopulations of emus destroying crops, Sir George Pearce asked the Australian soldiers to kill the birds using military equipment. This war cost over 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and it was done to attack the 20,000 birds, but through their attempts, it only killed maybe 13 birds. This immediately made Australia admit defeat and withdraw from this legendary war. In 1942-5, World War II take place, and during this time of our involvement in the war, Singapore falls and 15,000 Australian soldiers become prisoners of war. During this war, Japan bombs Darwin, killing 242 people. For the first time, civilians, militia, and volunteer soldiers fight together in defense of their country. An estimated 3,000 Aboriginal people in Torres Islands have also been included in the enlistment of men. In Arnhem Land, Aboriginal people make a special Recognitions Defence Unit. On top of this, during this year, the Australian Women's Land Army is established, and the women in Australia are now allowed to be employed in more masculine-based factory work. In 1956, the Olympics is held in Melbourne, and the black and white television begins transmission in Australia, which is a big development in media and what we view of the mass media in Australia. In 1968, Australia gets involved with the Vietnam War by training South Vietnamese Army. Aboriginal activists and others respond to the cabinet's refusal to make tribal lands available to the Gurindi of Wave. In 1970, 150,000 Australians marched in the Monterey against Australian involvement in Vietnam, one of the biggest protests on record. In 1971, the Aboriginal flag is designed by Harold Thomas for the Aboriginal rights movement. In 1982, after the hot summers and the droughts in Australia, the Ash Wednesday bushfires take place and kill 75 people and burns 418,000 hectares of land. In 1989, the internet becomes available in Australian universities. In 1996, the Prime Minister John Howard successfully brings in a new gun ownership and control law Australia after 35 people were shot in a mass shooting in Port Arthur, Tasmania. In 2000s, Australia celebrates the millennium and holds the Olympics in Sydney. As we progress further in history, we can see the development of people's understanding of people's rights and how it's important to continually change and adapt to become more of a multicultural society and be more accepting to minority groups. These references. Boom.